Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, it's exhausting following the news, isn't it? God almighty. Guys, I don't know where to start. I had a thought, apropos of absolutely nothing. I mean, sort of wading through all the horrors of the news cycle. Do you suppose the former president is showing up at this trial? I'm not sure if he's there again today, but he had suggested he would be. I'm wondering if he's not there physically in his orange flesh in an attempt to intimidate witnesses. I was imagining that he, who loves to intimidate people, has outsized view of the power that he still possesses. But at the same time, I would think if you were a witness in the case and you were saying things that could harm him and or his businesses, that it would require a little bit of a sort of steel myself. I'm telling the truth here. If he were, in fact, glowering at you. And I mean, I also think he might be there because this is a case about something that is very dear to him. And that is, of course, this grifting enterprise he has maintained throughout his life. So, but I really think because intimidation and bullying is so much a part of who he is, and he deploys and employs it whenever he feels threatened, and God knows he feels threatened right now. So, I mean, there's no reason for him to be in the courtroom. His sons aren't. And they're parties to this suit every bit as much as he is. I don't know. It's a thought I had. And it came to me when I heard that the judge had called him and his attorneys, and I guess everybody else, into his chambers to tell them in no uncertain terms that he would not tolerate the kind of usual threatening and intimidating behavior that Trump was, of course, engaging in, repeatedly slandering and thinly veiled threats, issuing thinly veiled threats against the people bringing the charges against him. And so the fact that it occurred to me that the judge, who everything I read about him says that he's a mild-mannered guy who likes to keep things light in his courtroom, who not above cracking a joke or whatever. He's not sitting on his high horse, and he does not use his position to intimidate, his extremely powerful position to intimidate. But that he would then, call Trump in. And to imagine Trump, I mean, just to imagine, this massive walking ego, having to listen to this mild-mannered man tell him, you will not do that anymore. There will be severe consequences. Nobody has talked to Donald Trump like that. Nobody. And I was thinking, for this mild-mannered judge to have that egomaniac in his chambers and to tell him, and that Trump would have had to stand there, take it. I'm sure he didn't argue. There were no cameras. He stood there and took it. This rebuke, this warning from somebody who Trump would see as possessing nowhere near the power that he possesses. So I was thinking about that, about how the judge saying that I'm imposing a gag order and there will be serious consequences. What? I don't know. I mean, nobody, I think, thinks that Trump will cease to be Trump. I'll be curious as to what the severe consequences may in fact be. So I saw something that I hadn't seen before, and I'm not sure where I saw it, but Trump actually said of Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, who is bringing the case, he actually said something like, and I should have this right, something like, get her or something. I mean, it was just out and out like a call to take her out. And again, I'm sitting here wondering where the hell I saw that. I would like to, not misspeak, but it was just appalling. And it was not in any way masked. It really seemed to be an order. And he knows who's reading this stuff, his orders on Truth Social. And he knows, again, as I've said many times, he just needs one to act. So I can't find it exactly. So we'll see. But we have all entered a place where we have never been before in terms of our politics, national politics, and in terms of our country. But so has Donald Trump. And I cannot begin to imagine the impact. Here, I did find it. He said of Letitia James, you ought to go after this attorney general. That's what he said. Yeah, you have to go after. You have to go after. That's an order. And knowing. I mean, we saw the people who showed up on January 6th who got their orders. And those orders were more veiled than this. You ought to go after this attorney general. And I don't know how, as I'm not the first to say, somebody's going to get killed. Trump was in California last week at some Republican convention there. And I had not heard this before, but it is in today's New York Times. He stood up in front of that crowd of his party members, and he said this: "We'll stand up to crazy Nancy Pelosi who ruined San Francisco." He paused and looked out at the crowd, always the performer, and he said, "Hey, how's your husband doing, by the way? Anybody know?" And the crowd laughed and applauded. And then he said, "She's against building a wall at our border, even though she has a wall around her house," which obviously didn't do a very good job. And the horribleness of this person is dwarfed in my mind only by the horribleness of the people who adore him, who look up to him, who laugh at that joke. "How's her husband doing? Anybody know?" And the fact that there are so many of them. A much bigger threat than he himself poses. I guess later in the day he was somewhere else, and he was talking about that anyone who shoplifts should be shot on sight. "You could fully expect to be shot as you're leaving that store," he said to the crowd in Anaheim. And the audience cheered wildly. "Shot," he added for emphasis. And the place went nuts. They rose to their feet and began chanting, "Trump, Trump, Trump." Violence excites them. The idea of shooting fellow Americans excites them. And he knows it. And he plays to it. Wow. So, we do not have a speaker. That happened faster than I thought it would. Okay, so there's no, I often wonder when I do tune in to cable news, how the people on it can continue saying the same things over and over and over again. And then I realize that I do too. That we're left to just continue to say the same things over and over again. that the Republican Party is incapable of government. They don't believe in government. And when given the reins of government, as the people gave them the reins in the last election of the House, it ceases to function. And if the House does not function, then the Congress cannot function. And since the Congress is one of the three major bodies, obviously, branches of our government ceases to function. It's like a three-legged stool, and one of the legs is missing. I don't know about you, but I would not sit on it. So I don't know who the hell is going to end up leading this fractious bunch of insurgents and nihilists and wannabe celebrities. I cannot imagine. And meanwhile, we're going to see the clock ticking toward another government shutdown, as if they haven't done enough damage. But there has to be a speaker in place if we're going to avoid another shutdown. And I cannot even conceive of what's going to be happening now in order for this group of incompetents and cynics to arrive at some consensus, which seems absurd. Speaking of absurd, oh my God, the gall, the chutzpah, of this man. This was in the Washington Post today. The Washington Post gave part of its paper over to a guest columnist, none other than a former Speaker of the House, one Newt Gingrich. And Newt Gingrich has the gall to write. I read it with my mouth hanging open. He says in part about Matt Gaetz. He is destroying the House's ability to govern, the House GOP's ability to govern. And I'm thinking, how little self-awareness and or historical memory must you possess, Mr. Gingrich, to not understand that Matt Gaetz is picking up where you left off? Who, more than any other person, brought to our politics this five-alarm fire way of governing, this burn it all down, this shut it all down? Huh? Who? It was Newt Gingrich. And here he is having the gall to write a column about how Matt Gaetz should be expelled. You can't even. I couldn't wait to look at the comments because, I mean, there's no way to to respond to this other than just, well, let's look at some of the comments. What universe are we in? Is this a Twilight Zone episode? Hot, calling kettle black. This is your legacy, Newt. Ruin any chance of cooperation in governance. Denigrate democratic presidencies. Implement strategies the Heritage Institute wants you to. Eliminate all social programs. Blame social unrest from the increased poverty you create on liberal policies. Wow, coming from this guy. Wow. You know, he's the one, well, let's recall, it's not as if he's behaving any differently than he ever did. He's the one who went after President Bill Clinton and denounced him and got him impeached for having an extramarital affair while he himself was having an extramarital affair, right? You cannot overstate the shamelessness of these Republicans. Cannot. Impossible. So what's going to happen now? You tell me. This guy will learn some new names. There's this guy, McHenry, who is now something called the Speaker Pro Tem. And he will be, it's not like he will be able to do much. He will not be able to bring legislation to the floor or take legislation off the floor. He won't have the power to issue subpoenas or sign off on any other official House business. So he's really not, there is no speaker. And also remember that the speaker, after the vice president of the United States, is next in line to be the president. Frightening. Which brings up the question is, who's number 4? Because if something were to happen to, God forbid, Biden and Harris, and there is no speaker, who's 4th in the line? It's a cabinet secretary, isn't it? I don't know. Somebody could do a little, I can't remember. I think I used to know that. So, I mean, these guys have to find a new speaker. That won't even happen until next week. Who the hell knows? And as I said, while all this is happening, the clock is ticking down to yet another shutdown, since all this idiotic crowd was able to accomplish last time the clock was ticking was to save the full faith and credit of the United States with about a few hours to go for the next 45 days, which is now down to what, 40? This is, government by chaos agents. And in regard to Gates, I had mentioned the other day that there is, he is detested among his colleagues. There are so many detestable people in that crowd that to be the number 1 is, it takes some doing. What's his name? George Santos. He doesn't even get into the top 10. Well, maybe he does. So there is, since the Justice Department closed out its investigation against Gates in regard to sex trafficking? Was that what it was about? That was unbelievable. It's not that they didn't have some evidence, they didn't feel they had enough. to nail him, and so they said we're not bringing charges. But that left the House Ethics Committee, believe it or not, there is one, the House Ethics Committee, which is comprised of an equal number of Republicans and Democrats, to reopen an investigation they had supposedly opened into their colleague, Gates. And among the allegations they're looking at are his sexual misconduct, his illicit drug use, his misuse of state records, his use of campaign funds for personal use, his acceptance of impermissible gifts, and the list, believe me, goes on. And so now there is a growing chorus of people in the House wanting to take him down through internal means, and which is what Gingrich was arguing: get him out of there, and literally expel him, which can be done, is rarely done, but can be done. And this is the same crowd that would not expel the aforementioned New York Republican Santos, who I didn't want to go, God forbid, to go into his many sins. Milton, I knew you'd do it. The order of succession. After the president, the vice president. After the vice president, the Speaker of the House. The next, is the President pro tem of the Senate. I bet you don't know who that is. I didn't know who that is. The President pro tem of the Senate. Why wouldn't it be the Senate Majority Leader? Why would it be the pro tem? That's interesting. Anyway, that's Patty Murray. And then it gets into the cabinet. Then it's the Secretary of State. And after that, Treasury, Defense, the Attorney General. Good God in heaven, and on and on and on. Thank you, Mel. God forbid we should ever learn to see that stuff implemented. But how the hell, why not? Why not? Hey, I found some good news. Be happy to know. It was actually on the front page of the Times today, and it was that global shipping, how most goods get around, manufactured in one place and shipped off to others, is, obviously contributing to global warming, right? And it turns out that this industry, global shippers, are showing an incredible willingness to retrofit their ships or to create totally new ships that do not use carbon fuel. Who would have thunk it? Turns out there are already some major freighters plying the seas and using, as well as their normal fuel, but supplementing it with wind power, just as the global sea trade did for most of human history. Use the wind. And so the article shows two different kinds of ships that are already out there. One with just this huge, immensely huge sail that's out in front of the ship that can be deployed, and it fills up with wind and, man, just pulls that baby through the ocean. They're saying that that particular configuration of using wind power on a freighter could slash fuel consumption by 40%. And that's good. And a major Japanese ship company has ordered 5 of these sails for their ships. Now, I mean, this is there are about 60,000 cargo ships out there now. And only about 30 of them are at this point wind assisted. But the number looks like it's going to grow rather quickly. And all of that is good news. It appears that they think, projecting that almost 11,000 merchant ships will be using wind propulsion in just 7 years. So I guess it's a pretty quick retrofit, and it pays the shippers. The reason the shippers are embracing it, obviously, is because for every little bit that sail propels the ship, that's less fuel that they're going to have to pay for. The wind is free. So it hasn't been a particularly hard sell, and there's some positive news. In case you thought there wasn't any. Well, and that's that. I don't think I was looking around. Yeah, do I have any more? Is there anything else positive here? I don't particularly think so. So let me just. Oh, by the way, and I'm sorry about this. I will not be able to do a show tomorrow. Sorry, I must travel, and I'll be back Monday and back in the saddle, and no trips, nothing that I'm aware of. So, just so you know, this is the last show of this week. So given that it's the last show of this week, let me do my usual last show sort of grab bag, neither here nor there, or hither and yon, or jumping with a tortured segue from pillar to post. Good God in heaven. Yeah, I do want to share some things that I hadn't been able to get into the mix recently. One was seeing how much the CEOs of the car companies make. And I found it particularly interesting that the CEOs of non-American car makers don't make anywhere near what the American guys make. So I was stunned by it, actually. I thought, oh, that can't be right. The CEO of Honda, his salary, now I don't know if he's getting, other perks, but so are the Americans. So this is just salary. CEO of Honda, $2.3 million. Can you imagine somebody living on a paltry $2.3 million a year? Oh, God, the humanity. That's Honda. That's the cheapest. Nissan, $4.5 million. Okay, now we're getting into, but that's still, for American CEO, that's an insult. Toyota, $6.7 million the CEO gets. All right, let's get out of Asia and head over to Europe. BMW, $5.6 million. CEO of Mercedes, Well, CEO of Mercedes should get some Mercedes bucks. $7.5 million. And as I said, I'm sure all of us could manage to scrape by on $7.5 million a year. Porsche 7.9. And then we get to the guys who are being struck by the United Auto Workers. Okay, here we are in the good old US of A. Ford Motor Company CEO salary, $21 million a year. And he's the least well paid of the bunch. 21 mil. Stellantis, who knew? I think it used to be Chrysler. 25 mil. And finally, General Motors, God bless him, 29 million the CEO gets. I just wanted to point this out, that American automakers, CEOs are vastly overpaid. And if they would just get paid like these guys in Mercedes and Nissan and Toyota and Honda, who, as far as I can tell, are doing every bit as good a job, if not better, at being CEOs of an auto company, that, well, I bet they could scrape together the money required to meet the demands of their workers who produce their product. Just saying. I have a caller. Hello.
Hey, good morning. This is Roger. How are you doing?
Okay.
Quick question. That's not why I called, but what you're talking about, and we've talked about it before, I mentioned anyway, about the 7 deadly sins. And not that I'm a religious person, but I have a little knowledge about the Bible, and I went to Catholic school and everything. And, you know, the greed, the envy, the gluttony, all of that. And I used to have some ministers who would call into the show way back, and I would like to hear their viewpoint. Is, you know, I'm just inferring to the title, Deadly Sins, and all these things that we're experiencing. Is that going to be the death of America because we're violating all these sins? If you're a religious person and really reading into the Bible, is this truly a thing that is going to, which looks like it's going to destroy us? Because you got these yahoos who don't have 2 cents to rub together are supporting all these. They're like, don't take away these CEOs' gazillions of dollars and their salaries, because that's un-American. That's the capitalism and all this stuff. So are we in, I mean, that's a danger to me. And I would like to see the religious take on that, because I'm just reading into the words, how we're behaving.
Well, I can't help you with that, because God knows I don't have the religious take.
I would like to hear from a religious person on that one. Regarding what reason I called was about the wind power. It just seems like, I mean, it's obvious we need to restructure our infrastructure, just like Republican Dwight Eisenhower did as president when he funded all these highways, because, you know, the middle class was growing, everybody had cars, and he saw that's the way the wind was blowing, But so when it comes to wind power and these poor electric companies, you know, they got the wires they're maintaining, but hey, if people aren't going to pay them for electricity because we're producing our own power at home, whether it's solar or wind, that's got to be discussed and dealt with, instead of just saying that we're going to stay with fossil fuels. The same way with electric cars and having adequate charging stations. You know, we went from horse and buggy, steel smiths to the gas combustion engine, to more people having vehicles, to needing roads that we're not able to ride on. And the government was part of this all the way around. So now we're in another adjustment period if we follow history, correct?
Yeah, and we better be pretty quick about it as well. We're in a transition period, and God help us, because every transition, I mean, the last major transition was from agriculture to industrial age, right? And that created incredible upheaval. And what we've got now is industrial to technological age. And that's going to create incredible turmoil. And the turmoil comes from a lot of lost jobs. What people used to do, they don't do anymore. But you can also suggest that, well, it can create jobs as well, but it takes a long time. It doesn't happen overnight. And technology is really threatening almost everybody's job.
It's not going away. And you're just not going to find a bunch of new people who can do this job that these old people can, because the people aren't out there. Our workforce is not keeping up with our needs now because baby boomers are retiring or dying off. And that's what I'm seeing in my last few years in working, is that can't find anybody because there's just nobody who's doing the job. But, like I was watching CBS Sunday Morning a few weeks ago, and they were talking with some really conservative people, leaders like in Idaho or Iowa or Wyoming, wherever. And they were working with renewable energy people because the leadership, the conservative leadership, understood that there are jobs out there and I got to get my people to transition from this to that, because otherwise, in a very short period of time, they're going to be without jobs, and we need to build our economy here. It was very uplifting to see somebody actually conservative thinking.
Well, that's
ahead,
right.
Which is unusual.
There are times when, yes, supposedly political opposites see and clearly see common ground, like environmentalists and a lot of folks in conservatives in Western states are starting to see common ground in a lot of areas. Who knows? God help us. I think the original sin actually is the biggest human sin is lack of humility. That's what I think. I think we think we're hot shit, and we are not. I was thinking the other day of the amazing animals, and how dare we think we are of somehow more value than an astonishing an elephant or a dolphin or a dog. How dare we, just by virtue of the fact that we possess speech? Many of them possess speech, but we are too dumb to understand it, okay? I'm just so sick and tired of humans. I am sick and tired. And that wonderful thing, learning that at one point that the Bronx Zoo had that exhibit, which said the most dangerous animal on earth. And all it was a mirror so that every person could see it was them. It was humans, without a doubt. All right, Roger, thank you.
Well, humility should be retaught, but it will probably be banned in some states.
Yeah, indeed. Okay. Toodaloo.
Right.
Bye. Bye. Yeah. I did want to get this in. It was a very, very, very long, fascinating article. The Washington Post is doing this incredible reporting on America's life expectancy crisis and how Americans are dying unlike people in other supposedly civilized, wealthy, industrial countries. Americans are dying. But of course, there is that divide in America. Rich people aren't dying. No. But they broke down one thing, and it shows how the Americans that are dying are living mostly in states run by Republicans. And, you know, right now, I can say to you, why would that be? Think about it. If you have a state that institutes Republican policies, then you're not going to have any social safety net. And people with no financial resources are going to die. And that is, in fact, it's quantifiable. They center this one piece in this extraordinary series in a town not far from Pittsburgh, Ashtabula, Ohio. Okay? Ashtabula. And they start with a guy who's the funeral director there. And he's 52 years old. And he says that he can't help but notice that about a quarter of the people he's burying in the last decade are younger than he is. He's embalming young people. 37-year-old killed by diabetes, 54-year-old lung disease, 54-year-old stroke, other premature deaths. He said they leave so many young children behind that when the survivors come to like maybe buy a coffin and stuff, he now has a PlayStation 5 and candy that he has in his office for the little kids they bring in with him who are now without a parent. He says it'll be me soon because I'm working 18 hours a day. I eat an unhealthy diet. He doesn't wear a seatbelt, which Ohio does not require. Strangely, it's like when you see, so the Republican state and little things like a Republican state that says, no, you don't have to wear a seatbelt. That kills people. So what the Post did is they said, let's take 3 towns, all sort of the same. They looked at Ashtabula, Erie, Pennsylvania, and Chautauqua, New York. And if you know your geography, those 3 are 3 sort of similarly sized cities, and they're on Lake Erie, right? Actually, they're a pretty short drive each from the other. They've all seen industrial jobs go away. They all have struggled economically. And yet, if you look at health outcomes, it's Ashtabula where you're more likely to die young, especially from smoking, diabetes, motor vehicle accidents, than anybody who's living in Erie, Pennsylvania, or Chautauqua, New York. Both states that have adopted much more stringent public health measures than Ohio. Simple as that. Now, believe me, they break it down. They break it down. So if you look at where people die, they die where the government is Republican. The pattern held true during the pandemic. Ashtabula residents died of COVID at far higher rates than people in Erie and in Chautauqua. And so the Post looked at, so this is mostly the state lawmakers. You elect Republicans to your legislature. You elect a Republican governor. And whoa, you're going to see more dead people. People in the South and Midwest, regions largely controlled by Republican legislators, have increasingly higher chances of dying prematurely compared with those in Democratic states. They analyzed all of the death rates, and Ohio sticks out. Roughly 1 in 5 Ohioans will die before they turn 65. This is a state whose legislature, through gerrymandering, has been increasingly Republican dominated. It has plummeted in recent years when it comes to life expectancy rates. It is in the bottom fifth of all the states. Somebody who lives in Ohio has a similar life expectancy to somebody who lives in Slovakia or Ecuador. It's an eye-opening read. Elect Republicans and die. Of course, it brings up a lot of other issues. Our broken healthcare system, the fact that we as a country have fewer protections for children, for families, for people who, for whatever reason, are struggling. We don't care. We demonize them. There is a cruelty in this country that sets us apart. Well, hey, Barbara, thank you for this. You are kidding me. President Trump entered court for the third day Wednesday, and he put another rant on his Truth Social, despite the gag order. Wow. He went after the Attorney General, New York Attorney General Letitia James, who filed the case against him. He wrote that she is corrupt and that she is running people out of New York. And some other blather. He says, I'm not even entitled under any circumstances to a jury. Yes, you were, Donald. Your own incompetent attorneys didn't ask for one. He goes on, this witch hunt cannot be allowed to continue. The start of communism right here in America. Well, we'll see if this makes the judge. So he of course, he is going to see if the judge was bluffing. Okay, in regard to healthcare in America and continuing labor strife, you've seen the big story today that 75,000 plus workers for Kaiser Permanente, that's they run hospitals and it's one of the largest healthcare private health care, still considered nonprofit. Will somebody explain that to me? Anyway, their workers around the country are striking today. In California, Oregon, Colorado, and Washington, 3-day strike. Pharmacists, optometrists, nurses, all kinds of people. And yeah, they're sick of what they know to be a healthcare environment that doesn't care about anybody's health, cares about its bottom line. Understaffed, overworked, mistakes happen. Can't be helped. So this, get ready. You're going to be seeing lots of strikes. Lots of strikes. Just want to reiterate something you probably already know, that don't be surprised around 2:20 this afternoon when your phone starts vibrating and you're watching TV, the TV doesn't go bah, bah, bah. It is a nationwide test of an emergency alert system in the event of, God knows, in the event of another, I guess, insurrection, in the event of some national situation that requires all of America to be put on alert. So that's happening at 2:20, just so you know. Few other little things, just gonna try to get some stuff in here. So I understand the bow hunters are in Riverside and Frick Park. It says here that over the weekend they managed to shoot 4 doe. I'm shocked by how small a number that is. In the entire weekend, they just got 1 in Frick. If you give me a bow and I don't even know how to shoot it, I could shoot. I wouldn't want to, but I could. You know, I went on that cemetery tour the other day, the one that I had public stages, Wayne Brindon telling you about. And after the tour, I was walking back to my car, and I walked past this, nice tombstone under a beautiful shaded tree, and there was a young buck lying down next to and I thought, and he looked at us like, hi, and we looked at him like, hi. And in fact, I said, hey, be careful. There's bow hunters about. But it turns out that, the herd has got to be culled. I'm just surprised they only got 4. They're going to hope to get as many as what? I don't know, 60 or 80 this year. And all 4 of these does were, slaughtered, and the 160 pounds of venison from them was donated to local food banks. So, except for those 4 creatures, that's, I guess, good. And just one other thing, apropos of nothing. I've always been just so freaked that the Vatican continues to try to make a saint out of a man who should burn in hell. And that is Pope Pius XII, who was the Pope during World War II. Even the Vatican is struggling, because this idea that all popes are saints, what nonsense. Anyway, he is well known to have turned a blind eye to the industrialized carnage of the German war machine. And turns out that last week, an archivist in the Vatican discovered a letter, yellowed with age, that was sent by a German Jesuit to the Pope's, this Pope, Pius XII, secretary, in December of 42, and warning him that they're killing people, that they're up to 6,000 people dying every day in blast furnaces. This Jesuit was talking about just one camp at Belzec. So, I mean, they were rounding up Jews, next door to the Vatican. 1943, 1,000 Jews rounded up, just a few blocks from St. Peter's Square. Anyway, Italian newspapers have covered this quite a bit, and they have said whatever the Pope's reasons for doing nothing, while millions upon millions of people were slaughtered, nobody can ever say he did not know. And if he is beatified or sanctified or whatever the hell they think they want to do, that will be an abomination. Okay, that's it from me for this week. I'll see you again on Monday. Have a good interim. Okay, bye-bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.